Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Cadisen C8238 dive watch. This watch is available from cadisen.net for $96, which is €92. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in a cardboard watch box, which is protected by this white cardboard outer sleeve you remove. This is the watch box. I'll show you the interior. So we have a piece of foam which protects the watch, and the watch sits in the base inside a foam cutout panel, as one would expect. So this does a good job of protecting the watch in shipping, and bear in mind this is a low tier price point piece at only €92. I think it's perfectly acceptable to be using a cardboard watch box at this price point. With regards to the items, this is the warranty card, and I'm pleased to report the C8238 we're going to be looking at is covered by a 2-year international warranty, which is very good. Usually at this price point in the low tier, below €100, one would expect a 12-month international warranty, so to get 2 years of international warranty is good. This is the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams. The instructions are in English and it details the operation of the movement used, which is the Seiko NH35A automatic. You also get this branded microfiber polishing cloth. I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth, irrespective of the price point of the piece. And lastly, you also get this 1.6mm jeweler's screwdriver for resizing the screw pin bracelet links in the oyster style bracelet. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 40mm case diameter. We have a lug-to-lug measurement of 48.3mm, a thickness of 13.4mm, and a lug width of 20mm. The oyster-style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the flip-lock clasp. As you can see, the flip-lock clasp is signed to a good standard with the Cadisen logo engraved longitudinally. Beautiful lustre to it, and I'm pleased to report it is a glide lock style clasp which we'll be testing. We have a flat sapphire crystal with clear AR coating on the underside, and the clear AR coating does an excellent job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the silver mirror polished handset. Now, there's a negative I want to bring to your attention. If you look at the white dial, you can see it has a metallic sheen to it, and the printed indices have black outlines to them as per the chapter ring, which has black minute ticks, and also the date complication, the date window is framed with black as well. So the dial is printed with black paint, which is good. The legibility, the clarity of it is all very good. But however, the handset is not black, it is silver, mirror polished. So there's a mismatch between the dial printing and the handset. Usually with watches, the hands and the indices match. So for example, on a dive piece like this, you can have silver applied indices and that matches the silver mirror polished handset. Or alternatively, you can have black printed indices as per this piece, and you would expect to see a black handset, so the black indices match the black handset. What you don't usually see is a mismatch, so for example, black printed indices with mirror polished silver hands, alternatively silver applied indices and a black handset, because the handset and the indices should match, it looks better. Now it's really notable, when I tilt the piece at an oblique angle, the AR coating works very well, but the hands are clearly mirror polished, they're not black, and the indices are clearly printed black, they're not applied silver mirror polished indices. So this is something I'd like to see Cadisen update, because it's very simple. They could either make the hands black or alternatively use applied indices rather than printing the indices on black, in black circles and infilling them with C3 Superluminova. The legibility of the dial is good. It follows the classic Rolex maxi dial proportions of the indices, and the framing of the date complication at 3 is good. So high definition printing, the quality of the font and the thickness of the letters is good. The legibility of the Cadisen logo is good. I'm just going to move the minute hand out of the way so you can see the text at 6 o'clock better. One thing I like is it's not too busy, it's not cluttered with unnecessary text and specification. We simply have 2 lines at 6 o'clock, automatic and 100 meters. I do like the red 100 meters because it matches the red tip to the second hand. So the design is good, the legibility is good, but unfortunately 100 meters is disappointing specification because this uses a screw down crown and screw down case back, so one would expect 200 meters rather than 100 meters. This is meant to be a dive piece and therefore 200 meters is the industry standard. Now the other negative I want to bring to your attention is the proportions of the handset. they look too short and undersized. If you look at the arrowhead minute hand, you can see the length of it is okay because it extends to the minute ticks on the chaptering, but the hour hand looks too short and also undersized in terms of proportion, as you can see. So the minute hand looks correct, but the hour hand looks too short and also undersized. The proportion of the minute hand is okay because the contrasting red tip to it does extend all the way to the minute ticks, but they really need to scale up the proportions of the handset and also lengthen them slightly because they just look slightly too short and also undersized. So with regards to the bezel, ceramic bezel inset which is inlaid with white paint, and we have a Lume pip at 12 o'clock. Scalloped 316L grade stainless steel bezel is well finished. The scallops are well deburred and chamfered, so no sharp points to them, but they do feel grippy and tactile. Nice mirror polish finish to it. So the bezel is very well finished, and the bezel insert is also very well finished. They've done a good job of inlaying white paint into the minute ticks and the Arabic numerals on the ceramic. So the crown is solid 316L grade stainless steel, coin edge finished. It's got a nice chamfer to it, and therefore there's no sharp edge to the tips of the coin edge teeth. Mirror polished domed cap, which is embossed with a Cadisen emblem to a good standard, so proportion is good, and the proportions of the crown guards are also good. So let's test the screw down crown execution. It feels smooth, but it's not silky smooth. You can feel some resistance. It does unscrew okay, but there is some friction which is caused by the friction of the internal thread of the stainless steel crown rubbing against the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube, so you can feel that metal to metal friction of the threading, and also there is some friction caused by the two rubber O-ring gaskets. There's one rubber O-ring gasket inside the crown and a second rubber O-ring gasket inside the crown tube, and the two rubber O-ring gaskets provide an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters, but this really is disappointing. One would expect to see 200 meters at this price point. So when it's unscrewed, we're now in the manual wind position, so one can manually wind the Seiko NH358 automatic to its maximum 41 hour power reserve. Nice medium resistance to it. One can feel the tension in the mainspring gradually building up to its maximum 41 hours, so it feels very smooth, and I like the solid robust feeling of manually winding the NH358. Putting it out to the first click position is the quick set date complication. So if you look at the date window at 3 o'clock, when I rotate the crown anti-clockwise, it clicks over to the next day of the month with a nice positive click. Good solid indexing. The proportions of the black Arabic numerals on the white date wheel contrast very well, so legibility is good, proportions are good, and also the alignment of the Arabic numerals, the doubles are aligned correctly. They're not too far to the left or the right. They're central in the date window, which is framed in black. So legibility is good despite not having a Cyclops magnifier over the date window. One can easily read the date. The proportions and the font of the Arabic numerals used is correct. So good proportions, good alignments. Pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movement. If you look at the contrasting red tip to the second hand, you can see it's now stopped dead. So it's possible to set the time precisely to the second with the NH358. So we're now in the time setting position. Feels smooth all the way through the 12 hours, both clockwise and anti-clockwise. It has a medium resistance to it. Feels nice and robust because the NH358 is a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement made in Malaysia. There is some slight back play, so when you rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there is some play. You can feel the slack in the gearing because the minute hand doesn't immediately respond. You have to take up the slack, and that's a characteristic of the NH358 you just have to live with. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. The red second hand begins to sweep around the dial once again. So let's test screwing it back down. Instant thread pickup. So there's a perfect interface between the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. The meshing is good, so the tolerances and the build quality are good, and I think there is room for refinement, but it is smooth. It's not silky smooth, but it's good enough. Right, so let's test the bezel execution. 120 click unidirectional bezel, as one would expect. Very light resistance to it. Now, I think this is too light. It feels very similar to a Pagani designed PD1661 bezel, which you may be familiar with. It's got that characteristic light feeling to the ratcheting mechanism. I think they should tighten up the click spring engaging in the grooves, in the 120 grooves in the underside, to give it more resistance, because it just feels too light. The other negative is it doesn't feel even all the way through the 360 degrees. It feels gritty and rough rather than being a smooth 360 degrees of rotation. It gets tighter and looser and tighter again and so on. So through the rotation, it doesn't feel even in terms of resistance. It's light all the way around the 360 degrees, but it gets slightly tighter and slightly looser. So it varies in terms of resistance. It's not consistent. Lateral side-to-side play, and the lateral side-to-side play is significant. I'm just going to check it in 4 positions because when I level criticism at a brand, I like to be fair rather than unfair, and I like to be unbiased. So I've checked it in 4 positions and we have significant lateral side-to-side play. You can feel it clicking. So it's a lot of lateral side-to-side play, which is unacceptable. Now I appreciate one has to expect some cost-cutting measures with regards to production costs, build quality and quality control at this price point in the low tier. We're looking at a €92 piece. This is below the €100 price point, and these are the kind of QC defects one gets, build quality and quality control defects. But bezel execution is a fundamental on a dive piece to get correct, and it is possible to get it correct because the steel dive SD1953, which I recently reviewed, had excellent bezel execution, no lateral side-to-side play, and that was only €80. So it was less expensive. This is €92 and the bezel execution is poor. So lateral side-to-side play, and we also have half a click of back play, as you can see. Now I'm just going to check it in 4 positions for consistency. Half a click of back play. Again, half a click of back play. And again. So all the way around the bezel, we have lateral side-to-side play and also half a click of back play. It's sloppy. So lastly, let's just check the alignment. Now, 1 click before, the next one should bring it up to perfectly on 12, and we're slightly to the right. If you look at the Lume Pippin triangle, you can see it is slightly to the right of the 12 o'clock index on the dial and the 60-minute tick on the chapter ring, so slightly off to the right. I'm just going to check it 2 more times for consistency, because as I've said, when I level criticism at a brand, I like to be fair. So we're now 1 click before, next click, slightly to the right, and I'll check it one last time, the 3rd and final time, to be absolutely certain. Right, so we're now 1 click before, the next click should be bang on the 60-minute mark, and 12 o'clock. No. 3 out of 3 times, the Lume Pippin bezel insert, the Lume Pippin triangle on the bezel insert are slightly to the right, 3 out of 3 times. Very disappointing. So, the alignment is incorrect. It's slightly to the right 3 out of 3 times. So, every single aspect of the bezel execution is poor on this watch. The rotation, 360 degrees, it doesn't feel even all the way through the 360 degrees. It feels tighter and looser, and it feels too light. Lateral side-to-side play, and also half a click of back play all the way around the bezel, and of course the alignment is incorrect. So everything is incorrect with this bezel execution. Cadisen really needs to improve upon this because, as I've detailed, I appreciate it's €92, but Steel Dive are getting it correct on the SD1953 at the €80 price point. No lateral side-to-side play, no back play, nice firm resistance, feels even all the way through the 360 degrees, and the alignment is bang on 12 o'clock every single time. So it's €80, Steel Dive are doing it. Cadisen should be able to match that. Right, so let's look at the bracelet and clasp in detail. So, male end links, and unfortunately I want to bring to your attention a negative, as you can see. Lateral side-to-side play, longitudinal play, up and down play in every single direction, and it is significant. It rattles. Just look at the amount of play there. The problem is it makes a clicking noise, and it's up and down and lateral side-to-side play and longitudinal. Every single direction we have excess play, and this is simply caused by poor quality tolerances. So the hole is drilled too large in the center of the end link, and also the pin is undersized. So the effect of that is it's a sloppy fit. It should be a friction fit. The pin going through the hole should have friction. It should be an interference fit, but as you can see, it's not. It's sloppy, and it rattles. Unfortunately, that's not the only problem. I'm pleased to see screw pins used in the bracelet rather than push pins as a cost-cutting measure, but every single one of the screw pin links in the bracelet has significant play. Lateral play, longitudinal play, side to side play and up and down play. Play in every single direction, and it is significant because each of the links rattles. Now the cumulative effect across the length of the oyster style bracelet is you can notice it on wrist because it feels very sloppy and it rattles. Let's check the other side for continuity. Now the positivity of it being very loose is of course it does articulate smoothly, there's no stiff links, it doesn't kink, but of course we've got too much play. You can hear it clicking and also see it visually. You can see the amount of play. Up and down, lateral, side to side, play in every single direction. It's a very sloppy end link. Now the end links themselves are a nice tight fit to the head of the piece, and the profiling is correct, and there's a beautiful luster. So the brushed satin finishing is good. The fit of the end links in between the lugs is good, but the actual end link itself has a hole in it which is drilled too large. Alternatively, the pin is undersized for the hole because you can see it's not an interference fit. It rattles. And again, same problem exists on the other side. Every single one of the screw pin links has longitudinal play, lateral play, side to side play, up and down play. Play in every single direction, and it rattles. So it's a sloppy bracelet. Very disappointing. On a positive note, the brushed satin finishing to the top side and underside is done to a good standard. So there is a beautiful luster, nice fine grained finish to it longitudinally. So the luster is good. And the mirror polishing to the flanks is also done to a good standard. So good quality mirror polishing. The deburring is also done well. So the positive is that it doesn't pull arm hairs and it doesn't feel sharp. There's no sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. So they've done a good job with the deburring. The mirror polishing and the brushed satin finishing is all done good. Screw pins are good rather than push pins, but it's just sloppy. The tolerances are too loose and they need to be tightened up. Right, so let's look at the clasp. As you can see, beautiful luster to the 316L grade stainless steel. The engraving is done well, doesn't have any sharp edges. There are no sharp edges to the top edge or the lower edge of the flanks. The end of the bracelet clasp is deburred very well, no sharp edge to it, but it does have sharp corners. These two lower corners have sharp corners which will scratch the wrist. They've done a good job of deburring and chamfering the top corners. They don't have sharp edges. So the top corners aren't sharp, but the lower corners have sharp edges which will scratch the wrist. This edge here on the end is deburred well, so that's not sharp, so that's good. Mirror polishing to the flanks is done well. Flip lock works good. I'll show you the interior. Just bear with me, it's difficult to open with my glove. So, solid mill 316L grade stainless steel, and it's Rolex style. As you can see, mirror polished internals on the top side, underside and flanks. No sharp edges to the flanks, so that's good. Doesn't have sharp corners to the midsection, so that's good. Let's check the hinge pins. Unfortunately, left-hand hinge pin has lateral side-to-side play, up and down play, longitudinal play, play in every direction. Centre hinge pin, again, significant play. It rattles. It's got a clicking sound. Lateral, longitudinal, side to side, up and down play. Play in every single direction. And as you can see, it wobbles. So finally, let's check the right hand hinge pin. And this is very bad. Dreadful. Look at the amount of play. And we're looking at side to side play, up and down play, lateral play, play in every single direction. It's a very, very bad fit, as you can see, sloppy. And this is simply down to poor quality tolerances because the hole is drilled too large and the pin is undersized. It should be a friction interface fit, but as you can see, it's not. It's sloppy. My concern with this is long-term durability. How long is it going to be before the right-hand hinge pin shears because of the excessive shear load it's being put under due to the excess play? Either the rivets are going to wear off in the elongated hole, or alternatively, the pin is actually going to shear due to the excess shear load. Because when you have play like this, and you keep opening and closing the clasp on a daily basis, eventually the pin wears in the elongated hole, and it eventually shears. Either the rivets shear off in the elongated hole, or alternatively the pin itself actually shears and breaks. So this isn't going to last. This is my concern with that amount of play. So the three hinge pins have play. Play in the left, play in the centre, play in the right, and of course the cumulative effect is it's a very sloppy milled clasp. Now on a positive note, it's a glide lock style clasp as per Rolex. So I've currently got it on the minimum extension. Let's fully extend it. Nice positive click. slides out nice and smoothly and engages with a nice positive click. So it actually works very well. And this is a pleasant surprise. Unusual to see this at this price point in the low tier. We're looking at a €92 piece. Now, to put this into perspective, Steel Dive are not using it on the SD1953 at the €80 price point. Pagani Design are not using it on the PD1661 at the €78 price point. So at €92, this is very impressive to see a glide lock style clasp. Now, of course, it's not refined and finished to the same levels as a Rolex glide lock. It doesn't have Teflon pads on the two sliders. It's stainless steel to stainless steel, so one does get extra friction, but nonetheless, it does slide up and down the body reasonably smoothly. It does click in and out with a nice positive click, and it unclicks with a good solid click. So it works well, and it does give plenty of adjustment, as you can see. So this gives good on-the-fly adjustment. Cadisen deserve credit. Now, okay, they do have play in the hinge pins. That is a negative, and it does have sharp corners to the tips of the corners, but the actual glide lock mechanism works okay. It snaps in with a positive click and it unclicks with a nice positive click. When it's at its maximum extension, we do have some play, as one would expect, as per the rest of the bracelet. You can see there, the tolerances are loose. They could do with some refinement. The end link in the bracelet is undersized for the internals of the glide lock style clasp, because you can see it wobbles. Also, the screw pin, as you can see, in the final link. Look at the amount of play we've got. Longitudinal, lateral, up and down, side to side play, and it rattles. But on a positive note, when it's clicked in, it's not going to accidentally deploy and extend. So it does snap in positively. And when it's on its minimum extension, it also feels good. It feels secure. So it does have a good positive click. It does work okay. But of course, there's room for improvements, room for enhancement with regards to the tolerances. But it's good to see it at the €92 price point, and I think they deserve credit for that. So let's look at the screw down case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel, longitudinal brushed satin finishing to it, which catches the light, it refracts it, so very nicely finished. It feels nice and smooth, therefore comfortable against the wrist. The circumference is mirror polished to a good standard, and we also have coin edge finishing. The coin edge teeth are deburred very well, no sharp tips to the teeth, so it doesn't scratch the wrist. And the circumference is concentric CNC lathe tool machine to a good standard, and it has the Cadisen logo and also specification engraved around the circumference. So it is a bubble back case back, but it does have a low profile center section, which is nice and flat. However, this is disappointing because it only provides 100 meters of water resistance. We're not looking at an exhibition case back used on a Pagani Design PD1661. With an exhibition case back, one would expect 100 meters. This is a solid stainless steel case back. There is no reason why a screw down stainless steel case back shouldn't provide 200 meters of water resistance. 100 meters is weak specification. Bear in mind, Steel Dive on the SD1953, which is €80, has 300 meters, 3 times the water resistance using a stainless steel case back. So it is possible at the price point of €92 to do it. 200 meters is possible. So it's well finished, no sharp edges to it, and beautiful luster to the brushed satin finishing. The mirror polishing is done well. So it's a well finished screw down case back, but it just needs to be 200 meters. The underside to the head of the piece is finished well. The brushed satin finishing is good. No sharp edges. This is the important thing to note. The undercut to the flanks to the case doesn't have a sharp edge. They've deburred and chamfered the case very well. The tips of the lugs are nicely deburred as well. It doesn't have sharp corners. So every facet, the crown guards and the undercut to the flanks, is all deburred and chamfered well. The mirror polishing to the lugs and also the crown guards and the flanks is done very well. Brushed satin finishing to the tops of the lugs has a beautiful luster, nice crisp line which marks the transition on the flanks, and the brushed satin finishing to the left hand flank is also done very well. So the quality of the finishing to the head of the piece is very good. The quality of the finishing to the bezel and case back is also very good. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm on the maximum extension of the glide lock style clasp, and as you can see, very long bracelet. This will easily fit up to a 9-inch wrist because I can easily slide 2 fingers beneath the bracelet and clasp, and I have a large 8-inch wrist. So that's good. If you are a collector with a larger wrist of 8 inches, this will fit you no problems whatsoever. I'm just going to actually move the glide lock clasp up to its minimum so you can see what it looks like when it's on its minimum and see if it still fits my 8-inch wrist. So we're now on the minimum on the glide lock style clasp, and I can still, even with it on its minimum setting, fit one index finger underneath the bracelet clasp. So even on its minimum, this will fit over an 8-inch wrist. So they've included plenty of links. Now, credit where credit's due. They've got the perfect taper. 20 to 16 is perfection personified. It's the perfect taper for a 40mm head of the piece for an oyster style bracelet. 20 to 16 gives a nice taper. Proportions of the clasp are good. Now, wrist presence is good. 40mm will fit you regardless of whether you have a 6 to 7-inch wrist or a 7 to 8-inch wrist respectively. At 48.3, it is very close to perfection in terms of lug-to-lug measurement. I often refer to 48mm as the sweet spot in my reviews because 48mm lug-to-lug is perfect. It will fit collectors with a wrist of 6 to 7 inches, or if you have a 7 to 8-inch wrist, 48 is the perfect lug-to-lug. At 48.3, it's just a fraction above the sweet spot, so it's very close to perfection. 40 by 48.3 is very good proportions. 20 to 16 on the bracelet is perfection. The thing I like about this piece is it's relatively low profile. Now, there's no Cyclops magnifier, nice flat crystal. It's slightly tall at 13.4. 13mm is the sweet spot because that will easily slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. At 13.4, it is slightly thick by 0.4mm. I think that this is disappointing because with a stainless steel case back and a 2mm thick sapphire crystal, this really should be 200 meters. At 13.4, one would expect 200 meters. 100 meters really is weak specification, but 13.4 is just a fraction over the sweet spot of 13, so it will still easily slip underneath the shirt cuff. So, wrist presence is good, aesthetically pleasing, legibility is good, proportions of the printed indices are good, hands do look slightly undersized, they need to be scaled up, but really the negative is the mirror polished handset doesn't match the black printed indices. It should have a black handset, alternatively silver applied mirror polished indices. Because of the mismatch, it just doesn't look right. The other negative is it's got a very deep rehort, and this is often the problem with NH35A powered pieces. They need to have a deep rehort in order to have adequate clearance on the cannon pinion because the second hand otherwise would foul the underside of the sapphire crystal. But even so, it's an exceptionally deep rehort and it's notable. I want to give credit because they have laser engraved it with Cadisen repeated all the way around the 360 degrees, so that does add interest to it as per a Rolex piece. And it is expensive to do laser engraving on rehorts, and it's done to a good standard. The laser engraving of Cadisen is done with very high definition engraving. Quality is good, but they've made the rehort very deep. The problem is the dial is set very deep beneath the sapphire crystal, and that reduces the legibility of it and also increases the reflection. If I tilt it at an oblique angle, it does have AR coating, but because the dial is a metallic sheen finish to the white, it's reflective, and also the mirror polished hands compound that. So it's a shiny reflective dial and a shiny reflective handset. Had they used black hands, the legibility would be better. And of course, they could have reduced the depth of the rehort slightly, and that would make the dial closer, because if you look closely, just look how deep it is. The problem with a deep rehort which is brushed satin finished is it has a mirror effect. It bounces the light around. What happens is the light enters the sapphire crystal, and because it's flat on the underside rather than being curved on the underside as per a double dome sapphire crystal, it bounces around the rehort like a 360 degree mirror, and the light bounces around the hands and also the underside of the crystal, and you get this reflection effect beneath the sapphire crystal. You get this glare, as you can see. It's like wearing a mirror on wrist. It's a real shame they didn't reduce the thickness of the rehorts, because that would make the dial closer to the underside of the sapphire crystal, reduce the reflection, and also if it had a black handset rather than mirror polished, you wouldn't get this shiny reflection from the hands. And of course you can see the underside of the crystal is reflecting off the dial because it's got a metallic sheen to the whites. It almost looks like silver. So those are the negatives. Right, so let's do a lume test and we'll see how the lume performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, this is disappointing. We've got C3 Super Luminova, which is good at the €92 price point, but we're clearly looking at 3 to 4 layers rather than 5 to 6. Now, initially, the exciter in the C3 appears to glow brightly, but unfortunately it's going to fade and fade fast to nothing because it's 3 to 4 layers. Now, on a positive note, there is a good colour tone match. The green tone of the C3 on the printed indices and the green tone on the handset is the same colour green, but you can see the error here. They've used blue Luminova on the Lume pip on the ceramic bezel insert rather than green C3, and this is wholly unacceptable. I appreciate this is a low tier piece costing €92. One is going to have to be realistic and expect some cost cutting measures, but this is one step too far. Blue used on the Lume pip is a mismatch of the green used on the printed indices on the dial and also the handset. It should be a green Lume pip. If they're going to use blue BGW9 on the handset and dial, then yes, a blue Lume pip is appropriate. But if you have a green dial and green hands, you need to have a green Lume pip. The Lume mismatch really looks disappointing. And even though this is €92 in the low tier, it is a fundamental they need to get correct. Now, as you can see, the C3 on the printed indices and the handset is now fading very fast, and the exciter is no longer glowing as bright white green. It's now going to a darker green, and as time goes on it will fade rapidly. This is the problem with the cost cutting measure of only 3 to 4 layers. 5 to 6 is the industry standard, and it is optimum for peak performance regardless of whether you use BGW9 or C3 Super Luminova respectively. 5 to 6 gives the exciter long-term performance, but as you can see it's now beginning to fade very quickly. Now, it's fading evenly, so it clearly indicates the same numbers of layers on the handset and also on the dial. We're looking at 3 to 4 on both. The green colour tone match is equal. But the Lume pip, which is clearly not BGW9, this is blue Luminova on the Lume pip on the ceramic bezel insert, that is also beginning to fade very quickly. So, disappointing cost-cutting measure. There is room for improvement on it. Now, I'll reference the Steel Divest D1953, which is €80 here, because that uses far better performing lume. At €80 it has a fully lumed ceramic bezel insert, and the performance of the Super Luminova used is brighter. The exciter is brighter because it has 5 to 6 layers. So at €80 it is possible to do it. You can have C3 or BGW9 5 to 6 layers at the €80 price point. This is 92. So Steel Dive can do it at €80 on the SD1953. Cadisen should be able to do it at €92 on this piece, the C8238. So fading very quickly, disappointing performance. Right, so let's discuss the movement used because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. You'll all be familiar with the Seiko NH35A automatic, which is made in Malaysia. It's been in service since 2011, so at this stage in 2025, it's a reliable, well-proven workhorse movement. It has 24 joules and it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. It has hand winding and hacking, which is useful complications, and a 41-hour power reserve, which is very good, and also a quick set date complication, which I've demonstrated works very well. The stated accuracy of the NH35A is -20 to +40 seconds per day, so a rather wide accuracy range. However, I'm pleased to report that Cadisen are well regulating the NH35As they're using. This one is consistently running at +8 seconds per day when it's fully wound to its maximum 41-hour power reserve. +8 is well within the -20 to +40 stated accuracy, and it is acceptable, although there is room for refinement. It is possible to regulate the NH35A in 5 positions to a better accuracy of ±5 seconds per day. So +8 is slightly fast, it is okay, but I would like to see Cadisen regulate the movements in 5 positions and improve upon the +8. They could get it to ±5 per day. Correct choice of movements at this price point. The NH35A is robust. It's a reliable, well-proven movement. The accuracy is good. The quick set complication works good. Feels good to manually wind. And the hacking works well. So it's a very reliable and accurate movement. And I think at €92 it is the correct choice. The negative is the deep rehort, as you can see. And this could be slimmed down. It doesn't need to have such a deep rehort. The dial is too far away from the sapphire crystal. I appreciate they've done a good job of laser engraving Cadisen, but the rehort really does look too deep. I think the dial is too far away from the flat sapphire crystal. So I'd like to see the handset changed to a black handset to match the black printed indices, because it doesn't look right with the silver hands and the black printed indices and the black minute ticks on the chaptering. These are the things they need to be getting right. So last, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch for my channel, the watch meets 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So low tier piece, the price point is €92. I'm going to say it is okay quality and okay value. It is a difficult piece to weigh up because there are some positives and there are some negatives. It does have AR coating, which is a positive, and it does have screw pins in the bracelet rather than push pins, so they are positives, and it is impressive to see a glide lock style clasp used at this price point, unusual at €92. But unfortunately there are several QC defects, such as the poor bezel execution, the crown isn't silky smooth, and this is only 100 meters. It should be 200 or 300 at this price point. And of course we've got the main negative, which is the sloppy bracelet and sloppy end links and the play in the 3 hinge pins. So it needs a lot of work, it needs a lot of refinement, bezel execution, sloppy bracelets, and upgrading the Lume, because it's only 3 to 4 layers versus 5 to 6. So I'm going to say okay quality and okay value rather than good or excellent. I'm going to recommend it to you for consideration, but bear in mind the shortcomings and the build quality defects. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Cadisen C8238 dive watch. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.